A sense of despair is looming. Troubles surrounding from all sides, humiliating defeats in the courtroom, and a public image on a rapid decline. That is all people have been saying about Prince Harry throughout the past terrible week. The British media had prepared their most sarcastic articles, and public opinion was ready to unleash the heaviest criticisms aimed at him. However, just when the whole world was certain that Harry was enduring an international public relations disaster all alone, a spectacular deception was unveiled right before our eyes. Meghan Markle, along with her 2 children Archie and Lilibet, was not hiding behind the solid iron gates of their million-dollar mansion in Montecito, California, as we all mistakenly thought. Somehow, they quietly passed through the immigration gates of the United Kingdom, slipped past the dense crowds of paparazzi, moved with the absolute silence of a ghost, and headed straight to Highgrove House for a highly mysterious private meeting with King Charles and Queen Camilla. There was no fanfare, not a single prior announcement sent to the press, and absolutely no flashy security team. A massive media machine was spectacularly led astray by a family plan hidden to absolute perfection. This sudden appearance, like a bomb falling from the sky, shattered all previous speculations and completely overturned the storyline. The newspapers were busy weaving. But let us pause for a beat and ask ourselves whether this astonishing silence truly stemmed from a pure desire for family affection, or if it was merely a perfect smokescreen for a deeper calculation with a strong Hollywood flair. You might wonder if this trip was genuinely an effort to heal familial bonds, or just a meticulously calculated media chess move down to the very last step. Please comment the number 1 if you believe in family affection, or the number 2 if you think this is just a lucrative contract. We will uncover the truth together right now. To understand why the secret presence of Meghan created such a massive earthquake, we need to review what happened just before this closed-door meeting, at the exact moment when Harry seemed to have lost everything. Looking back at the rapid chain of events from the preceding days, the overall picture seemed painted in the gloomiest colors, looking exactly like a dead end for the Duke of Sussex. Harry had just received a truly cruel bucket of cold water from the British legal system when his large-scale lawsuit against the publisher of the Daily Mail was officially and bluntly dismissed by the judge. For someone who always positioned himself as a victim needing protection, always loudly demanding absolute protection from the ruthless scrutiny of the press, losing this case was not merely a severe financial loss, with massive legal bills amounting to hundreds of thousands of pounds. Moreover, it was a fatal blow to his personal credibility and the fragile image he had painstakingly built before the American public and the whole world. At that moment, millions of eyes were fixed on Harry. The paparazzi in London had loaded their memory cards, and tabloid editors had drafted the most mocking headlines. Everyone was holding their breath, waiting for a moment of breakdown, a grimacing face, an angry glare, or at least a hurried walk, head bowed, to avoid the constantly flashing camera lenses. But Harry did not do that, and his reaction brought the entire media industry to a standstill. At the Invictus Games event taking place that very day, instead of cowering in an armored vehicle with a bitter expression, he stepped out proudly. He smiled radiantly, as if he had just won the jackpot, giving a thumbs up to signal that everything was perfectly fine to the cheering crowd. He even lingered comfortably, joking about the hot weather with grace and composure. That smile was immediately and mercilessly dissected by many royal commentators and body language experts. They called it the delusion of a man who dared not accept reality, a weak, forced, and pathetic public relations effort to cover up the extreme humiliation of a prince who had just tasted a miserable defeat in his own homeland. They believed he was trying to put on a terrible play before the eyes of the public. But now the fog has been blown away. Everything is completely clear, and that seemingly unreasonable radiant smile actually had a perfectly good reason. Harry did not smile because he was naively ignoring his legal defeat, but because he knew perfectly well he was holding a heavy trump card, an earth-shattering secret that no seasoned paparazzi in London, no matter how sophisticated their hacker network or informants were, could sniff out. He knew that his wife and children were not thousands of miles away on the other side of the ocean. They were very close. By proactively throwing himself into the center of public opinion, drawing all scrutinizing attention to his solo appearances, Harry turned himself into a media magnet, creating a flawless and perfect smokescreen. The Hollywood public relations team of the Sussex family truly deployed an excellent smokescreen in the style of the most dramatic spy movies. While every media lens and news helicopter was pinned on every movement of Harry in central London, Meghan and her 2 children were quietly executing a rotation campaign entirely in the shadows. They silently passed through underground very important person walkways at the airport, completely avoiding the eyes of the ordinary crowds, stepped into highly secured black glass sport utility vehicles, and traveled through the streets of England without leaving a single trace. The fact that Meghan resolutely avoided all public events, abandoning the camera flashes she naturally loved and always craved to dominate, was absolutely not cowardice or timidity, as the press had hastily mocked. It was a strategic move calculated with precision down to every detail. It was absolute discipline for a single and ultimate goal, ensuring the landmark meeting with the king went smoothly, without being ruined by any media incident or overly excited crowd. However, when the iron gates of the mansion closed, this meeting was nothing like the usual warm family reunions filled with tears and comforting hugs. On the contrary, it carried the tense atmosphere of a high-level diplomatic negotiation. Close internal sources revealed that in exchange for a mere few hours face-to-face with King Charles and Queen Camilla, the Sussex family had to bite the bullet and agree to a series of extremely strict unwritten agreements, arguably the harshest ever. The first and immutable rule was that no electronic devices were allowed into the room. No telephone was permitted to record audio or video. There were absolutely no social media posts prepared in advance to be released on the internet to create public waves. And the most important clause, vital to the royal family, was that no commercial activities, no documentary film contracts, and no exclusive interviews on American television were allowed to use the content of this conversation as material to make money. Buckingham Palace, after a series of deep wounds from sensational interviews on American television, million-dollar documentary series on streaming platforms, and a public opinion-shattering memoir, had learned a bloody lesson. They were no longer naive. They had established an invisible steel perimeter, determined to block all risks of information leaks, turning the meeting into an area of absolute security, completely isolated from the outside world. However, the fact that Meghan, a master of media manipulation, someone who always knew how to fully utilize every moment and every connection to turn them into money-making content, docilely accepted these strict conditions that stripped her of all promotional tools, was what truly made observers raise a massive question. The acceptance by Meghan to cross the palace threshold empty-handed, without bringing a filming crew, without private photographers to capture the healing moments, and remaining completely silent on the media front, seemed entirely contrary to her usual ego and operational style. One might ask why a person who always considers attention as her lifeblood would accept losing this golden opportunity to record the moment. The answer does not lie in sudden remorse or reverence. If we take a step back and look at the financial numbers flashing red alarms on their desks in California, facing a mountain of massive bills to maintain their royal lifestyle, all these concessions and unusual silences share a very practical and highly calculated reason. We cannot dissect the deep calculations of Harry and Meghan while ignoring a cruel truth that suffocates them every day: the massive financial pressure in California. In Hollywood, love or declarations of noble ideals cannot be used to pay the bills, and the reality is that this couple is living on a volcano of colossal expenses. Let us put aside empty rumors or flowery public relations articles and look straight at the chillingly realistic numbers. Their luxurious mansion in Montecito is not merely a home worth more than $14 million. It is essentially a bottomless money pit. Behind the lush green lawns and beautiful rose gardens are millions of dollars evaporating every year for some of the most expensive property taxes in America, massive utility bills, continuous maintenance costs for a vast estate, and salaries for dozens of service staff. Most importantly, they have to bear an enormous expense for a private security team on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Those black-suited bodyguards and armored sport utility vehicles constantly patrolling around the property were things the British taxpayers used to bend over backwards to pay for. But now, everything must be drawn directly from their own pockets. To maintain the extravagant lifestyle of the Hollywood ultra-rich, on par with powerful figures in the entertainment industry, the couple needs a massive, stable, and continuous flow of cash pouring into their accounts. But the fatal problem is that the media empire they once boastfully painted when they first set foot on American soil is showing signs of cracking beyond repair. The initial glamour has faded, giving way to the cruel statistics of the entertainment industry. The massive podcast production deal worth $20 million with Spotify was not simply cancelled, it collapsed in an unprecedented public humiliation. There was no amicable parting or face-saving press releases. Instead, the whole world had to drop their jaws when a senior Spotify executive publicly stated in the press, calling them directly wretched scammers. In this heartless Hollywood world, you are only as valuable as your most recent successful project. And to Silicon Valley tycoons and producers alike, Harry and Meghan are gradually becoming a risky investment. They promise to deliver world-shaking content, but ultimately only handed over bland products, lacking depth and failing to retain listeners. Now, as the Spotify bubble has burst, all survival pressure falls entirely on the final life-saving contract, the massive deal with the streaming giant Netflix. But let us face reality. Netflix is not a charity organization, and they certainly do not throw tens of millions of dollars out the window to buy empty promises. Netflix executives need views, they need explosions, they need stories with enough weight to make millions of new subscribers pull out their credit cards. They absolutely do not care that Meghan Markle wants to teach how to make organic strawberry jam, how to set a dinner table, or peaceful lifestyle programs. The harsh truth is that the sole appeal of the Sussex brand, the only thing that makes Americans willing to linger in front of the screen, is built entirely on their connection and clashes with the British royal family. The mass audience does not throw money to watch a former actress give lifestyle guidance. They are insanely curious about deep palace secrets, about heated arguments behind the doors of Buckingham Palace, and about conflicts among royal members. The further they move away from their royal roots, the more disastrously their commercial value plummets. That is the greatest paradox in their lives. To prove they can live independently, they must constantly squeeze and cling to the very institution they once left. That is why they cannot, and will never dare to, completely cut off this blood tie. And right at this moment, their desperation is pushed to the peak by a countdown clock that is ticking incessantly. They are running a race for survival against a highly sensitive time milestone. Right in this month of July 2026, historic changes regarding royal funding regulations, mansion renovation plans, and especially legal security commitments are expected to be comprehensively reassessed by the British government and Parliament. This is not a regular meeting, this is a verdict. If the couple fails to establish a solid bridge, some undeniable presence with King Charles right before this deadly deadline, they risk being permanently ousted from all long-term privileges forever. Therefore, the fact that Meghan accepted swallowing her pride, sneaking into England, even if only as ghosts walking in and out of the gates of Highgrove Mansion in absolute secrecy, was also a mandatory chess move. It was an urgent survival signal shot straight to the business world in America. They might not bring back a single joint photo to sell to magazines, nor a single video to put into documentaries, but in the world of media manipulation, that is enough. Just the public believing that they still maintain a direct line of communication, still being allowed to step into the living room of King Charles, is enough to maintain the dying breath for contracts on the verge of cancellation. They are not buying a reconciliation, they are buying time. This lightning-fast meeting is the most expensive currency they can bring out to mortgage. However, if the officials of Buckingham Palace smugly think that they have sealed off every commercial corner of this trip with a strict image ban at Highgrove, then perhaps they are too naive. Because the real gold mine, the holy grail that brings massive profits, might never lie in the meeting with King Charles. It lies in a sacred, quiet place that is much more profoundly symbolic. The most suspicious point, and also the detail that ignites all conspiracy theories of this entire secret trip, began to emerge when internal reports leaked a shocking piece of information. There is a professional filming crew, armed to the teeth, closely following every step of Harry. The official explanation released, like a familiar conditioned reflex, is always that they are only filming for activities within the framework of the Invictus Games event. It must be admitted that this is a perfect shield, a bulletproof armor that cannot be pierced in terms of media. The Invictus Games is a great charitable project for wounded veterans, an incredibly respectable activity deeply imbued with humanity. There will be no journalist or commentator cruel and foolish enough to stand up and criticize the filming that honors soldiers who have sacrificed a part of their bodies for their country. Harry knows this very well. He uses the very sacredness of a charitable organization as a smokescreen. But in Hollywood, the boundary between producing a pure charity documentary and using the excuse to collect expensive personal material to sell to streaming platforms is extremely thin, so thin that people can easily tear it apart at any unnoticed moment. The suspicion of the public and royal observers exploded even more fiercely, shifting from whispers to heated debates, when reputable sources began to buzz about a second destination in the itinerary. The Sussex family might visit Althorpe. For those who do not know, Althorpe is not just a vast estate of the Spencer family, but it is a sanctuary. It is the final resting place, lying quietly in the middle of a small island on a lake, of the late Princess Diana. On the surface, if we only look at the story through a naive and emotional lens, this is a completely legitimate desire, even an incredibly touching one. Any father in this world, after so many years away from his homeland, also longs for a chance to bring his little children back to visit the grave of their late grandmother, whom they never had the opportunity to meet. It strikes the compassionate psychology of millions of American citizens, people who always value family values. But with Harry and Meghan, we cannot just evaluate the surface. History has proven time and time again with undeniable evidence that every most private moment, every deepest pain of theirs, can be brought out to be packaged, labeled, and thoroughly commercialized. Let us step back a little and recall the times Meghan appeared before the public. It has never been a coincidence. Remember the way she deliberately wore outfits tailored with the exact same styles and colors as her late mother-in-law during major events. Look at the luxurious gold-striped Cartier tank watch of Diana that always reigns on the wrist of Meghan during decisive broadcast moments, or the aquamarine stone jewelry subtly shown off before the lenses. Even from the way she tilts her head, the way she smiles shyly, to the way she interacts with the crowd, everything is calculated in detail to evoke memories of the princess of the people. The legacy of Diana is not just a beautiful memory for the Sussex family, it is the sharpest tool, the most powerful media weapon for them to manipulate the emotions of the global public, especially the American audience segment, who have always held an absolute reverence for the late princess. The most important thing we need to engrave in our minds right now is the time milestone. Coming up, the whole world will enter the preparation period for the 30th anniversary of the death of Princess Diana. This is not an ordinary event. This will be a media tsunami sweeping across every front page, every news bulletin. Billions of people will once again pour their attention into her tragic life and great legacy. Media giants, especially content-hungry giants like Netflix, are red-eyed searching for shocking exclusive footage to dominate this game. Now, close your eyes and imagine a scene like this. It does not need to be a shot from an expensive cinematic camera or brilliant studio lighting. It only needs to be a piece of footage that looks as if it were secretly filmed from afar, under the characteristic grey sky of England, or a slightly shaky video from a phone. The scene unfolds, Prince Harry, with a thoughtful and sorrowful expression, holding tightly with both hands, the little hands of Archie and Lilibet. The three of them, father and children, walk alone on the quiet green grass of Althorpe, slowly heading towards the island where their legendary mother and grandmother is resting in peace. A chilling silence, a yin and yang connection across generations. How much do you think that footage is worth? That is not just a profoundly moving image, that is pure solid gold. Just 10 seconds of that footage is enough to pull in millions of new subscriptions for streaming platforms, and it is worth tens of millions of dollars in contract negotiations. It is the golden ticket to ensure the survival of the Sussex brand for at least the next decade. And this is the point of genius, the most perfect legal loophole in this entire plan. Buckingham Palace can issue a strict camera ban at Highgrove Mansion. King Charles can strip away all their media privileges on the lands owned by the Crown. But the British royal family does not have a single bit of authority, even the smallest, over Althorpe. That vast estate is private property, belonging to the absolute independent ownership of Earl Charles Spencer, the maternal uncle of Harry. King Charles cannot forbid Harry from bringing a camera to the private land of his maternal family. The confidentiality commitments of the palace are completely useless before the gates of Althorpe. By creating this sudden and mysterious trip, Harry and Meghan played an extremely spectacular two birds with one stone chess move. On one hand, they just scored points in the eyes of King Charles, creating an image of obedient children willing to humble themselves and fly halfway across the globe to visit their sick old father. On the other hand, and also the most core purpose, they created a reasonable and perfectly justifiable cover to bring the children back to England. From there, they calmly and thoroughly exploit the commercial value, serving the massive sympathy-squeezing project related to the priceless legacy of Diana without anyone having the right to intervene or forbid them. The truth about the cameras hiding at Althorpe might need more time to be verified, at least until the trailers of the new documentaries are released by Netflix. But there is another harsh truth that was immediately exposed, right when the wheels of the car carrying them rolled safely on British soil. This smooth, successful, and noiseless trip unintentionally shattered into pieces the biggest defense, the strongest legal weapon of Harry over the past many years. Throughout the turbulent years since the day he packed his suitcase and left his status as a senior member of the royal family, there is a familiar, loud, and most persistent chorus that the world constantly has to hear from the Duke of Sussex: the United Kingdom is a dead land, too dangerous for his family. Like a scratched record playing a terrible script over and over again, Harry has cloaked himself in the garb of a father, a husband desperately protecting his wife and children from invisible dark forces. He not only complained on American television interviews, but also made an unprecedentedly arrogant move, continuously dragging the British government, dragging the Home Office of his own homeland to the courtroom stands. His purpose was to demand, or rather to exact, being provided with a level of national armed security protection equivalent to the full-time working members of the royal family. He always used the excuse, and sometimes screamed in public, that without a heavily armed police escort team, his wife and children would immediately become targets of countless life risks. The expensive legal team of Harry once did not hesitate to release thick documents, firmly asserting that there are countless threatening plots surrounding them, every time they set foot at the border. But let us look straight at the price of these theatrical plays. The grueling legal journey, that media circus at the courtrooms, has consumed millions of pounds of the blood and sweat tax money of the people. Taxpayers in the United Kingdom had to bend their backs to pay for the pointless trials of a prince living lavishly in a $14 million mansion in California. That is a direct slap in the face of the public. Harry built a perfect victim image, making a portion of naive audiences believe that England is truly a place where the Sussex family cannot safely step out of the airport without special forces clearing the way. However, the reality that took place over the past week has poured a bucket of freezing cold water on all those fragile victim-playing arguments. Millions of followers and even the most seasoned security experts could not help but be stunned to see a naked truth exposed in the sunlight. The Sussex family just executed a perfect trip exactly like ghosts. They moved through the international airport easily, smoothly, traveled across the country, came to rest at the Highgrove mansion of the king, and then left without a single seasoned paparazzi managing to capture even a blurry picture. There was no chaotic crowd to bother them. There was no terrifying car chase on the streets like what they once ridiculously exaggerated in New York. And absolutely, there was no security threat emerging from the shadows. Everything went smoothly. The most ironic thing is that they achieved that miracle in absolute privacy, guaranteeing 100% safety, using the very private protection resources that they paid out of their own pockets to arrange. No need for the armed police of the government. No need for sirens. By proving that they are perfectly capable of organizing such a secret and perfectly safe visit on their own, Harry has inadvertently shattered his own core argument in his lawsuits. This is his worst and most clumsy public gamble. You cannot clamor for urgent protection because you are being hunted, and then sneak in and out of the country invisibly whenever you wish. If he can take his family to meet King Charles smoothly, then his constant crying in the media that the United Kingdom is a place filled with danger suddenly becomes an exaggerated play to deceive and gain sympathy. The success of this trip is the sharpest and most ironclad evidence against them. It exposes a harsh truth. Privacy and safety are completely feasible as long as they do not intentionally report their schedule to the media, and as long as they do not crave lowering the car window to attract camera flashes. When they truly do not want anyone to know, no one will know. When they are surrounded, it is because they allow it to happen to serve the cameras. This leads us to a sharp question that Hollywood commentators are whispering and dissecting. Is it possible that the real reason Meghan previously insisted on not returning to the United Kingdom did not stem from her fear of physical safety issues at all? Many media experts have determined that what Meghan is truly terrified of is not extremists, but the boos and jeers of the British public. She fears facing cold shoulders, fears satirical banners exposing the truth, and fears the alienation from the very people who once cheered for her. Or, according to a more pragmatic and cruel perspective of the business world, it is simply because previous trips did not bring enough commercial benefit and did not have high enough exchange value for her to make the effort to do her makeup and fly across the Atlantic. Safety has been fully proven by their actual actions, the handshakes that may have been exchanged in the dark corner of the Highgrove living room. However, can the heads of the British royal family truly breathe a sigh of relief and believe that everything has ended smoothly? Is the palace being too naive to celebrate a smooth trip without scandal? Or is this just a suffocating, terrifying silence filled with calculations before a media storm with more terrible destructive power is about to land? Buckingham Palace, with all its majesty and strict security principles of centuries, may have implemented every extreme precaution imaginable. They may have established an absolute security perimeter, required the confiscation of all recording devices, forced the powering off of all mobile phones, and even checked thoroughly before allowing Harry and Meghan to cross the threshold of the Highgrove living room. But there is a cruel reality that King Charles and his senior advisors understand all too well and are certainly losing sleep over. You can strip away all electronic devices on someone, but you absolutely cannot erase their memories. The precautions of royal officials, who are too tired of the accusations in the newspapers, have never truly been about hidden cameras in pockets or tiny microphones installed under shirt collars. Their real fear lies in words carefully remembered, expressions deeply etched into the mind, only to be taken back to California, molded and restirred by seasoned public relations brains, and finally turned into weapons of mass destruction on the covers of American entertainment magazines. When you talk to people who are used to turning their lives into a reality television show, every sigh, every frown, or a moment of hesitation from the king can be edited into $1 million story. The rift of trust between the palace and the Sussexes is not a small crack that can be patched with a lightning meeting. It is an abyss that is very difficult, if not impossible, to bridge. Longtime observers and experts in decoding the Hollywood elite understand the immutable formula of the Sussexes all too well. Their silence is rarely the end of a story. On the contrary, it is usually the perfect momentum, the deadly silence before a new information explosion is triggered. Let us look back at history and how they once manipulated the media through a network of trusted journalists. The book Finding Freedom or the global shock memoir Spare are the most classic examples of the drip feed strategy. This is a dark art in the modern public relations industry. They never release everything at the same time. Even if there is not a single blurry photo of the meeting released this week or next week, their media machine will not let the matter sink into oblivion. It is very likely that in just a few weeks, when public opinion begins to loosen its attention through morning television channels in America or magazines like People or Us Weekly, we will begin to hear exclusive stories from anonymous sources. This strategy will work like a dripping faucet. There will be headlines whispered to each other appearing on the brightly lit news of Hollywood about how the king was moved to tears when he first held Lilibet in his arms, or how Harry proactively and bravely made peace and untied the family knot. We will hear detailed accounts so incredible about how Meghan behaved gracefully, delicately, and full of altruism throughout the meeting. These details will be selected extremely carefully, polished flawlessly to flatter the image of the couple, gradually appearing on social media platforms to step-by-step rebuild the image of a family overflowing with love, maturity, and tolerance. And of course, the key point, and also the most bitter thing for Buckingham Palace is, no one, absolutely no one, can verify the authenticity of those stories except for the people in the room. When you release a story about personal emotions, about tears and secret hugs, you have created a truth that cannot be broken because no one has evidence to deny it. That is the cruelty, coldness, and extreme effectiveness of the modern media game that Meghan and her team have mastered. By staying absolutely silent right now, without rushing to make any official statements, they create a huge information gap, thereby stimulating an extreme desire from the public and the media. The more audiences crave to know what happened behind those oak doors, the more expensive the value of leaked information later becomes. The genius of this plan is that they absolutely do not need to blatantly violate the confidentiality agreement with King Charles. Their hands are not directly stained with mud. They only need to let their closest friends, powerful television hosts in America, accidentally reveal beneficial details on national television as anonymous insiders. They have the right to deny involvement, using plausible deniability perfectly. We did not speak out. It was our friends who spoke for themselves because they were too frustrated or too emotional. If and when that actually happens, Buckingham Palace will immediately fall into a bitter dilemma. The traditional royal motto, "Never complain, never explain," suddenly becomes a fatal weakness. If the palace speaks out to deny those leaked stories, they will lower themselves, entering a cheap back-and-forth war in the newspapers, turning the 1,000-year-old monarchy into a farce on gossip sites. But conversely, if they choose to swallow the choke and continue to endure in silence, as they often do, it means they raise a white flag, yielding the entire media front, letting the Sussex side freely rewrite the script of the historical story in any way most beneficial to their contracts. This is not merely a family visit. This is a public relations gamble that is truly too clever and cruel. Harry and Meghan have outlined a move in which they turn the concealment, silence, and strict bans of the royal family into the most powerful, mysterious, and attractive promotional tool without needing to spend a single cent on any public relations company. The quiet in Highgrove is not a sign of peace. It is the terrifying ticking sound of a time bomb waiting for the day to detonate right in the heart of Hollywood. Ladies and gentlemen, the lightning-fast and mysterious trip of the Sussex family to the United Kingdom has closed, but the shocks it created in the royal circle have only just begun. No matter how you look at it through any lens, love or hate, it cannot be denied that this is an excellent move in the life-and-death media chess game of Harry and Meghan. They have obtained a symbolic meeting with the king, created a premise to hold on to the lucrative contracts standing on the edge of the abyss, and very likely have silently collected priceless materials at Althorpe for future projects. Most importantly, they have proven to the world that they are capable of manipulating global attention even without appearing at all. The upcoming developments will be the clearest answer as to whether the meeting at Highgrove truly brings a ticket back to the circle of power for the couple. The ultimate truth still lies behind the closed oak doors of the palace, but it will certainly not sleep forever. So, after hearing all these deep dissections, has your point of view changed yet? Do you think Meghan finally conceded for pure family affection? Press the number 1. Or do you firmly believe that this is just a prelude to a new commercial campaign full of calculations? Press the number 2. Please leave your comments below, and do not forget to click subscribe to the channel so as not to miss the next hidden corners of the royal world. See you all again in the next videos.